They say the Vatican is the house of God. But what if I told you it also hides one of the most secretive financial empires the world has ever seen? Behind these holy walls stand marble saints and golden altars. But beneath them, vaults filled with secrets money can't buy and truth can't survive. For centuries, kings kneeled here, emperors kissed rings. And even today, world leaders don't enter. They beg permission to enter. Because this isn't just a church. It is a bank, a government, a kingdom, and a power built not only on faith but on fortune, influence, and silence. Millions pray here for salvation. But somewhere in the shadows of these sacred halls, dark deals were whispered. Fortunes were made, fortunes were lost, and some men who crossed the wrong line never walked out again. The Vatican isn't just guarding holy relics. It is guarding a hidden financial web that stretches across continents. Silent billion-dollar accounts, secret investments, intelligence networks, and scandals so explosive they were buried before the world could ever know. This is the story they never wanted you to hear. And once you enter these gates, there is no turning back. They say the Vatican is the house of God, a place of angels, prayers, forgiveness, and faith. But behind every sacred place there is a story of power. And behind this one lies one of the most mysterious, guarded, and powerful financial kingdoms the world has ever seen. A kingdom not ruled by kings or generals, but by men in robes, guided by scriptures, and protected by silence, secrecy, and centuries of influence. For most people, the Vatican is holy ground, a city of miracles, saints, and salvation. Pilgrims travel across oceans to whisper prayers beneath golden ceilings, believing this place belongs only to God. But if you step behind the marble pillars and the ringing church bells, if you listen closely to the whispers hidden in ancient corridors, you discover a very different story. A story not just of faith, but of land, gold, banks, intelligence networks, diplomacy, and unimaginable wealth. A story where religion meets power, and power needs no explanation. To understand the Vatican, you cannot think like a believer. You must think like an emperor. Because this tiny city, smaller than a neighborhood in Rome, commands influence that once shaped kings, crowned rulers, and silently directed the course of nations. And it did not happen overnight. It began nearly 1,700 years ago, when Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity. With one imperial decree, a persecuted faith transformed into a rising empire. Land began to flow in. Wealth began to grow. Nobles donated estates and gold to secure their afterlife, and rulers partnered with the church to secure their earthly thrones. In a world filled with war and chaos, one institution stood untouched, because it claimed its authority not from earth but from heaven. And slowly, the Vatican learned something powerful. Faith brings followers, power brings obedience, and wealth brings the world to its feet. By the Middle Ages, the church was not just a religious authority. It was the largest landowner in Europe. Think about that. No king owned as much. No emperor collected as many tithes. While kingdoms rose and collapsed, while castles fell and blood soaked the earth, the church grew, quiet, patient, eternal. Where armies used swords, the church used belief. Where kings used fear, the church used salvation. And where others fought for territory, the Vatican collected loyalty, gold, and influence. One soul, one coin, one kingdom at a time. Fast forward centuries, revolutions, wars, new empires, new ideologies. Yet the Vatican lived through all of them. And then came the age of banking. A world where power was no longer measured by land, but by capital. Money became the new throne. Banks became the new crowns, and those who controlled finance controlled the future. The Vatican understood this faster than most nations, and so in 1942, as World War II consumed Europe, something extraordinary happened behind these ancient walls. The Vatican created its own bank, a sovereign bank, a bank immune from Italian law, free from taxation, protected by diplomatic privilege and shielded by divine authority. Officially, it was called the Institute for Works of Religion, but to the world, it became the Vatican Bank, a financial fortress in holy robes. Its public mission was noble, to manage church funds and support charity. But quietly, it evolved into something far more powerful, a silent vault for confidential accounts, discreet transactions, and global influence. No parliament could demand records, no government could audit it, no investigator could step inside without permission. It answered only to the Pope, and often, only to those the Pope trusted most. One of those men was Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, a towering figure with the charisma of a diplomat and the authority of a general. He once said, "You can't run the church on Hail Marys." Under his leadership, the Vatican Bank became a silent partner in international finance. Accounts opened for political allies, secret funds moved across borders, and networks stretched from Europe to Latin America, sometimes to fight communism, sometimes to protect church interests, sometimes for reasons still buried in shadows. Marcinkus lived inside Vatican walls, immune to Italian law. Outsiders called him untouchable, insiders called him essential. But power always has a cost, and one day, the world caught a glimpse behind the curtain. An Italian bank named Banco Ambrosiano, secretly linked to the Vatican Bank, collapsed. Billions vanished. Shell companies across Panama and South America surfaced. Rumors of mafia connections spread like wildfire. And then came the most chilling moment. The bank's chairman, Roberto Calvi, found hanging under London's Blackfriars Bridge. Pockets filled with bricks, a symbol, a warning, a message. Authorities first called it suicide. Years later, they quietly admitted it was murder. But no names were revealed, no trials, no confessions. Silence, the Vatican's oldest shield, protected everyone. Even today, truth hides behind these walls. The Vatican remains a sovereign micronation with no public budget, no open financial statements, and no political accountability. It owns priceless art, prime real estate across Europe and beyond, vast investments, gold reserves, and confidential accounts, many belonging to people the world will never know. Tourists see faith carved in marble. Historians see power carved in centuries. But those who understand financial empires see something far more intimidating. A structure beyond governments, beyond borders, beyond oversight. Walk into St. Peter's Square, and you see worship. But behind the singing choirs and holy statues, there is a network, ancient, disciplined, silent. A system that outlived empires, war, kings, dictators, revolutions, and global financial crises. A system protected by belief, diplomacy, tradition, and time. And perhaps the only system in the world that truly answered to no one but itself. So here is the question the world still fears to ask. Is the Vatican the guardian of souls or the guardian of secrets? Does it protect faith, or does faith protect its power? The truth may lie beneath marble floors, inside sealed archives, and in vaults guarded by tradition older than most nations. Maybe it lies in buried documents, maybe in whispered confessions, maybe in graves of men who knew too much. But one thing is certain. The Vatican's power was never built only on prayers. It was built on silence, influence, and a mastery of the world's oldest currency, belief. And once a power learns to hide behind holiness, it becomes untouchable. For centuries, the Vatican's greatest power was not what the world could see, but what the world could never prove. Silence is a language here. Secrets are currency. And loyalty is not earned. It is expected. As the modern world shifted from thrones to governments, from swords to corporations, the Vatican adjusted with it. It didn't fight wars. It influenced nations who fought them. It didn't raise armies. It guided leaders who commanded them. And while banks opened their books and nations declared budgets, the Vatican watched quietly, protecting the one thing even kings fear to expose: truth about power. And so, while the world recovered from World War II, rebuilt nations, restored economies, and elected governments, the Vatican built something else: alliances. Whispers with presidents, handshakes with generals, quiet meetings with intelligence agencies. The world battled communism, capitalism, and chaos. But in the shadows, the Church played both protector and observer. Many believe the Cold War was fought only between the CIA and the KGB. But deep within Europe, there was another silent participant. One with centuries of strategy and global influence. A participant whose goal was not land or ideology, but survival of its authority. The Vatican became a hidden player, moving funds through trusted networks, supporting anti-communist movements, sheltering intelligence couriers, and ensuring the Church stayed on the side of the winning world. Money didn't just flow from Rome. It was channeled like an underground river across Switzerland, Germany, South America, and eventually into American political foundations. Every dollar wasn't documented, every meeting wasn't recorded, but history remembers patterns, and patterns never lie. Some say the Vatican worked closely with Western intelligence. Some say it helped smuggle money to right-wing groups fighting socialist leaders in places like Latin America. Some claim the Church helped former fascists lose their pasts and gain new identities, because politics in the shadows often ignores morality in daylight. The truth? It lives in sealed archives, and in memories guarded by graves. Then there was the Mafia, a world of loyalty, blood, money, and silence. Two systems built on secrets eventually cross paths, and when they do, alliances form. Not official, not written, but mutually beneficial. The Mafia needed a clean place to wash money. The Vatican needed quiet financial networks. And in dark corners of Italian nightlife and polished Vatican chambers, deals whispered through intermediaries. Sometimes the line between sin and survival disappears. Sometimes institutions of purity find themselves dancing with forces they publicly condemn. But in power, there are no saints, only interests. And as billions moved silently, as influence stretched like invisible vines across continents, something unexpected shook the Vatican again. The sudden death of Pope John Paul III in 1978. A gentle reformer, a humble man, a pope who served just 33 days. He had begun questioning financial irregularities, questioning powerful figures inside the Church, questioning the Vatican Bank. Then, overnight, he was gone. No autopsy, no investigation, no answers. Just silence. Some call it coincidence. Some call it divine mystery. Others call it something far darker. And once again, truth disappeared behind locked doors. But time never stops. And as scandals faded, a new world emerged. Global markets, digital banking, mega corporations. The Vatican adapted once more. It built real estate portfolios worth billions across London, Paris, Switzerland, and New York. It invested in stocks, bonds, private ventures, sometimes quietly, sometimes controversially. Documents later revealed Vatican funds even ended up in surprising places, from luxury properties to Hollywood productions. But every time questions rose, the same answer echoed: spiritual mission, internal matters, divine protection. No government could demand clarity. No financial authority could force disclosure. And every time the world tried to peek behind the curtain became thicker. Today, the Vatican appears peaceful. Tourists with cameras, priests walking courtyards, the Pope addressing crowds. Yet behind the calm lies a machine still running. A machine built on centuries of influence. A machine that learned how to survive every empire, every system, every storm. The Vatican holds diplomatic relationships with more countries than most superpowers. Its representatives sit in international organizations, quietly shaping agendas. Its properties and investments circle the globe. Its archives contain secrets from empires long gone and governments still alive. In those vaults may lie letters from kings, intelligence exchanges from the Cold War, financial ledgers from empires, and perhaps truths too dangerous to see daylight. Because the Vatican's greatest success is not its wealth, it is its survival. It outlived Rome, Napoleon, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, and every system that ever threatened it. Not through armies, but through patience. Not through force, but through knowledge. Not by conquering land, but by conquering time. When you stand in Vatican City, you don't stand in a religious capital. You stand in a city-state older than most countries, richer than most banks, and quieter than any intelligence agency. A realm where silence is tradition, secrecy is defense, and truth is guarded by memory, doctrine, and fear. So ask yourself, how powerful is an institution that answers to no ruler, no nation, no currency, no election, but commands the loyalty of over 1 billion souls? What happens when spirituality and strategy live under the same roof? When a nation claims moral authority but also moves like a geopolitical force? When holiness and history merge with influence and wealth? Maybe the Vatican is the keeper of faith. Maybe it is the protector of history. Or maybe it is the greatest silent power ever built. A kingdom without borders, a bank without accountability, a state within a state, and a guardian of secrets humanity may never fully uncover. And now that we've stepped into the shadows of this holy empire, the question isn't whether the Vatican keeps secrets. The question is, how many secrets does it keep? And how far would it go to protect them? The answers lie beyond prayer. In the corridors where whispers travel faster than light, where loyalty runs deeper than truth, and where time itself stands guard. They say kingdoms fall when armies weaken, and empires crumble when their wealth runs dry. But what about an empire that never relied on armies and never allowed the world to see the true scale of its wealth? This is not the story of a church. This is the story of a power that survived kings, revolutions, global wars, collapsing banks, and the rise and fall of nations. An institution that never needed to march soldiers, raise flags, or conquer land, because it mastered something far greater: influence without force. Welcome to the deepest and quietest layer of the Vatican's power, an empire built not on territory but on belief, loyalty, secrecy, and time. The Vatican sits on the smallest country in the world, barely 0.17 square miles. Yet its influence stretches across continents. Governments fall, corporations collapse, but the Vatican remains untouched. There are no elections, no ruling parties, no opposition, no public audits. A government that answers only to itself and to God holds power that modern states can only dream of. Its reach extends into more than 180 nations, through diplomacy, influence, and centuries-old loyalty. It does not have borders, but it has presence everywhere. It does not command armies, yet world leaders treat it like a throne above thrones. Deep beneath Vatican City lies a vault unlike any other, not filled with gold but with knowledge. The Vatican's secret archives, a massive underground world of locked files, ancient manuscripts, royal letters, political agreements, and financial records that span more than 1,000 years. Some say it holds truths capable of rewriting global history, evidence of alliances, betrayals, disappearances, hidden wealth networks, and events the world was never meant to know. It is not a library for education, it is a vault of power, because knowledge is control and control is survival. When people imagine Vatican money, they picture donations and charity. But behind marble halls and sacred rituals lies a global financial engine. Real estate in London and Paris, stakes in banks and insurance companies, private investments across Europe, media interests, gold reserves, and government bonds. Quiet money, always moving, never loud, not chasing profit for growth but securing influence for eternity. Where modern financial empires chase returns, the Vatican builds leverage. It does not fear market crashes the way others do, because its wealth is old, distributed, protected, and hidden in places money rarely reaches: tradition, devotion, and history. Throughout time, some figures tried to uncover these secrets: bankers, investigators, journalists, insiders. Some resigned unexpectedly. Some vanished from the public eye. Some died under mysterious circumstances. Cases closed, files sealed, questions buried. History teaches one thing very clearly: power does not always fight its enemies. Sometimes, it simply outlives them. When an institution has survived every era of human power, silence becomes its strongest weapon. Empires used armies, corporations use capital, governments use laws, But the Vatican's greatest tool has always been faith. Billions who believe, billions who follow, billions who defend it without the Vatican ever needing to ask. It did not conquer territory, it conquered loyalty. No border can contain belief, and no army can defeat identity. That is the kind of power nations envy, and history has never seen another system like it. Influence built not on fear, but on reverence. Control, not by force, but by trust across centuries. Rome fell. Ottoman sultans faded. British power shrank. Soviet ideology collapsed. Every empire has a peak and a fall, every empire except one. The Vatican evolved in every era, adapted to every shift in world power, negotiated with kings, survived revolutions, and watched global superpowers rise and weaken. While others ruled history for a moment, the Vatican learned to survive history forever. Not through miracles alone, but through patience, diplomacy, secrecy, intelligence, finance, and faith woven into civilization itself. So what is the Vatican truly? A sanctuary of faith? Yes. A spiritual refuge for millions? Yes. But also a strategic institution that mastered power in a form more resilient than kingdoms or corporations. A network built not on soldiers, banks, or borders, but on belief, information, influence, and time. Beneath the hymns, beneath the gold ceilings, beneath the marble saints, lies a system designed to endure beyond every empire mankind has ever built. A power that hides in plain sight, protected not by force, but by centuries of reverence. This is not a story of religion versus corruption. This is the story of the only empire in human history that never truly fell. And somewhere behind those sacred walls, buried deep in halls untouched by sunlight, secrets continue to breathe, waiting, watching, surviving. If you want to uncover more hidden empires, secret wealth networks, and the dark truths history tried to bury, then make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Pastify Hub, where the past doesn't sleep and secrets never stay buried. Pastify Hub, where history speaks and shadows reveal the truth.